At 8:17 on a Thursday evening, my husband's business partner looked directly at me across a private dining table and whispered, "You're supposed to be dead." The waiter stopped pouring wine. My husband dropped his fork. And for 3 full seconds no one in the restaurant moved. I looked at the silver-haired man sitting opposite us. "I'm sorry." He glanced at my husband, then back at me. His face had gone completely pale. "You're Mara Bennett." It wasn't a question. "Yes." He pushed his chair back slightly. "But Daniel told me you died 18 months ago." My husband recovered first. He forced a laugh that sounded nothing like him. "Adrian, you're confusing Mara with someone else." The man didn't look away from me. "No, I'm not." He reached for the leather folder beside his chair and pulled out a document. There was a photograph attached to the first page. My photograph. It had been taken at a company event 6 years earlier. Beneath it were my full legal name, my date of birth, and 3 words that made the room tilt around me. Date of death. I stared at the page. According to the document, I had died in a boating accident 14 months earlier. According to the man sitting across from us, my husband had buried me on paper while I was still sleeping beside him every night. Daniel reached across the table. "Give me that." Adrian pulled the document away. "Don't touch it." The softness in his voice was gone. He looked like a man who had just realized he had invested millions of dollars in a lie. "My name is Mara Bennett. I was 42 years old, and until that dinner, I believed my husband had brought me to meet the man who might save our company. Instead, I discovered that my husband had already sold part of it using a death certificate carrying my name." I did not scream. I did not demand an explanation in front of the restaurant. I looked at Adrian and asked one question. "What did my husband receive after I died?" Daniel leaned toward me. "Mara, we should leave." I ignored him. Adrian opened the folder. "Daniel represented himself as the sole surviving beneficiary of your voting shares." My heartbeat became painfully steady. "How many shares?" 54% of Bennett Restoration Group. The company my father and I had built together. The company Daniel had joined 7 years after it was founded. The company he had spent the last 5 years calling his. "How much money did you give him?" I asked. Adrian's eyes moved toward Daniel. $6 million as an advance against a future acquisition. I slowly turned to my husband. Daniel's jaw tightened. "This is not what it looks like." I almost smiled. "People always say that when the truth looks exactly like what it is." Adrian continued. "The full acquisition was supposed to close next Monday." "What acquisition?" Daniel lowered his voice. "We're not discussing confidential company matters here." I looked at him. "You declared me dead." "It was a temporary corporate structure." The waiter quietly placed the wine bottle down and left. Adrian stared at Daniel. "A temporary death?" Daniel's face reddened. "You don't understand the legal arrangement." "Then explain it," I said. He glanced toward the nearby tables. "This is not the place." "You chose the place." "No. I brought you here because Adrian requested a meeting." Adrian shook his head. "I requested to meet your new design consultant." The sentence confused me. "What consultant?" Daniel closed his eyes briefly. Adrian looked at me. "He told me his wife had died and that he had recently hired a consultant named Mara Ellis." My maiden name was Ellis. Daniel had introduced me to Adrian as a woman who merely shared the dead wife's first name. He had brought me into the room using my maiden identity because he believed Adrian had never seen me in person. He had almost been right. Almost. I picked up the death document. The signature near the bottom belonged to a physician I had never met. The witness section contained the name of Daniel's assistant. The certificate was not an official state record. It was an affidavit, a private document used to support a change in company ownership. That distinction did not make me feel safer. It made the deception feel more deliberate. "You didn't need a real death certificate," I said. Daniel looked at me. "You only needed Adrian to believe I was dead." He pushed his chair back. "Mara, come with me." "No." His expression changed. For 13 years, Daniel had been able to end most disagreements by lowering his voice. He called it staying calm. In reality, it was a warning. The quieter he became, the more I was expected to surrender. That night, I remained seated. Adrian closed the folder. "Mrs. Bennett, I believe you need independent legal counsel." "I already have one." Daniel looked surprised. He shouldn't have been. Rachel Kim had handled my father's estate and every major contract Bennett Restoration signed during its first decade. Daniel disliked her. He said she treated marriage like a possible lawsuit. I once told him she was simply careful. Now I wished I had been more careful too. Adrian handed me his business card. My private number is on the back. Daniel reached for his coat. This dinner is over. Adrian remained seated. The acquisition is suspended. You can't suspend it based on a misunderstanding. I can suspend it when the majority owner walks into a restaurant after I was told she was dead. Daniel stared at him. If you breach the agreement, my company will sue. Your company? Adrian's gaze moved toward me. That appears to be one of several questions we need answered. Daniel left without waiting for me. I watched him walk through the restaurant doors. Then I turned to Adrian. How did you recognize me? He opened his phone. The acquisition file included photographs of the original founders. My father and me, standing inside our first office. I had been 26, wearing paint-stained jeans and holding a rolled set of architectural plans. Daniel had assumed Adrian would remember the company but not the woman beside its founder. He had underestimated both of us. Adrian looked ashamed. I should have verified everything independently. You believed my husband. Yes. So did I. That was the only comfort I could offer him. I called Rachel from the restaurant parking lot. She answered on the second ring. Maura, I need you to tell me whether I'm legally dead. There was silence. Then, where are you? Outside Ashford House. Is Daniel with you? No. Stay somewhere public. I'm coming. She arrived 30 minutes later wearing a navy coat over workout clothes. I gave her the affidavit and told her everything Adrian had said. Rachel read the first page twice. This was prepared by Holt Corporate Services. Who are they? A private filing company. They prepare ownership records and internal corporate documents. So it isn't a government death certificate? No. I exhaled. Rachel did not look relieved. But it may have been used to make changes to your company's shareholder register. What changes? If the company agreement has a death transfer clause, Daniel may have represented himself as the beneficiary of your shares. He isn't. I know. My father had left his shares to me through a trust. Daniel would inherit nothing unless I changed the documents. I never had. Rachel photographed every page. Do not go home tonight. He knows I know. That's precisely why you should not go home. Do you think he would hurt me? She met my eyes. I think a man who creates documents declaring his living wife dead has already crossed a line neither of us knew existed. That night I stayed in Rachel's guest room. I did not sleep. At 2:08 in the morning, Daniel began messaging me. Adrian misunderstood the paperwork. The death affidavit was part of a tax strategy. Nothing was filed publicly. Come home before you destroy the company over something you don't understand. The final message arrived at 2:31. Your father trusted me to protect what he built. That was the message that made me cry. Not because it was true. Because my father had never trusted Daniel with the company. He trusted me. Daniel had spent years quietly rewriting that history. At 8 the next morning, Rachel and I entered the county records office. There was no death certificate in my name. But there was something else. 16 months earlier, Daniel had filed an amended shareholder statement with Bennett Restoration's corporate registry. The statement said that I was permanently incapacitated and presumed deceased following an international accident. It transferred my voting authority to Daniel under an emergency provision. My signature appeared on the final page. I had never signed it. Rachel pointed toward the notary stamp. Do you know her? Melissa Crane. Daniel's executive assistant. Yes. Then we have our first witness. By lunchtime we discovered 3 more documents. A new board resolution granting Daniel complete executive control. A loan secured against company property. And a notice authorizing negotiations for the sale of my father's original workshop, the building where Bennett Restoration began. The workshop belonged to my separate family trust. Daniel had no authority to sell it. Yet the contract described him as its sole beneficial owner. I sat in Rachel's office surrounded by papers carrying my name. How long has he been planning this? Long enough to build a story around your absence. What absence? Rachel looked at me carefully. The months you spent caring for your mother. My mother had suffered a stroke 2 years earlier. For almost 10 months, I divided my time between our home and her rehabilitation center in another state. Daniel encouraged me to step back from the company. He said family mattered more than meetings. He volunteered to handle board decisions. He praised me for trusting him. While I was helping my mother learn to speak again, my husband had begun telling business partners I was disappearing. Rachel opened another email. It had been sent to senior managers 14 months earlier. Mara's condition has worsened. The family requests privacy. Direct all company matters to Daniel. My condition. My death. My silence. All created by the same man. At 3:40 that afternoon, Adrian called. I found where the $6 million went, he said. Rachel put him on speaker. Daniel had received the money through a holding company called North Vale Acquisitions. $4 million remained in its account. The other $2 million had been transferred. To where? I asked. Adrian hesitated. A private residential development outside Charleston. I closed my eyes. Daniel had mentioned Charleston several times that year. He said the city had strong commercial potential. Who owns the development? A company registered to Melissa Crane. His assistant. The notary on my forged documents. Rachel's expression hardened. Is it a business property? No, Adrian said. It's a waterfront house. I felt something inside me go still. Has construction started? It's almost complete. For Daniel. Adrian did not answer immediately. Then he said, the design plans include a primary suite, 2 children's bedrooms, and a home office. Daniel and I had no children. Melissa had 2. The business fraud was no longer hiding only money. It was hiding another family. At 4:12 my phone rang. Melissa. Rachel gestured for me to answer. Hello. Melissa was crying. Mara, I didn't know he was bringing you to dinner. What did you know? He said Adrian would never meet you. I closed my eyes. So you knew I was alive? Yes. And you notarized documents saying I was dead. He said it was temporary. Everyone keeps using that word. He said you had already agreed to leave the company. I didn't. I know that now. Rachel leaned closer to the phone. Melissa, you should obtain independent counsel before saying anything else. Melissa's breathing became uneven. He told me the sale would be finished Monday. Then what? I asked. Silence. Melissa. He said we would move to Charleston. There was the house, the children's bedrooms, the life purchased with money stolen from my company. Did he tell you he was divorcing me? He said you were already gone. The wording hit harder than it should have. Not dead. Gone. To Daniel, perhaps those words had become interchangeable. Melissa continued. There's something else. What? He asked me to prepare a new document yesterday. Rachel began writing. What document? I asked. A statement claiming you had returned after suffering a psychiatric episode. The room became silent. He planned to say the woman Adrian saw wasn't really you? No. Melissa's voice dropped. He planned to say you were alive, but mentally incapable of controlling the company. Daniel's first plan had been to erase me. His second was to discredit me. And now that I had appeared in front of Adrian, he was rewriting the story again. Melissa whispered. He's calling an emergency board meeting for Monday morning. Why? To have you declared incompetent before the acquisition closes. Rachel looked at the calendar. Monday was 3 days away. Daniel believed he still had time. He believed he could replace death with instability and continue as if nothing had happened. I looked at the forged affidavit on Rachel's desk. Then at the photograph of the waterfront house. Let the meeting happen, I said. Rachel studied me. Mara. He wanted a room full of people to vote on whether I exist. I picked up the document declaring me dead. Let's give them the opportunity. Daniel spent the weekend telling the board I was unwell. I knew because 3 directors called me. One sounded concerned. One sounded suspicious. The third asked whether my doctors had cleared me to make business decisions. Daniel had prepared them carefully. He told them I had suffered a breakdown after my mother's stroke. He claimed I had disappeared voluntarily. He said the death affidavit was created only because no one could locate me. That part would have been laughable if it had not been so calculated. During the months I was supposedly missing, Daniel and I shared a home. We celebrated our anniversary. We attended a charity dinner. He posted a photograph of us online, then deleted it 2 days later. He had not hidden me from the world. Only from the people whose money he wanted. On Saturday, Rachel's investigator recovered copies of Daniel's communications with Holt Corporate Services. In one email he wrote, "My wife is effectively gone. The paperwork needs to reflect business reality." The representative responded, "We require proof of death or legal incapacity." Daniel replied, "I can provide internal certification and notarized statements." He did not accidentally use the wrong form. He searched for the minimum evidence necessary to make strangers believe I no longer had a voice. Melissa's attorney contacted Rachel on Sunday morning. She was willing to cooperate. In exchange, she wanted protection from Daniel and an opportunity to return whatever money remained under her control. I did not trust her. But I believed fear had finally made honesty more valuable than Daniel's promises. Melissa provided the original digital files used to create my signature. Daniel had scanned it from a company anniversary certificate. He stored it in a folder labeled Mara Authorization. Inside were 8 documents I had never seen. Board resolutions, loans, property agreements, shareholder notices. Each carried the same copied signature. One file was different. It was a draft separation agreement dated 6 months earlier. It stated that I had voluntarily transferred all company interests to Daniel in exchange for the house we lived in. The house had belonged to me before our marriage. Daniel intended to offer me something I already owned in exchange for a company he had stolen. "He expected you to sign this eventually," Rachel said. "When?" "Probably after the sale, when he could threaten you with financial ruin." I looked at the signature line. He had already added my name. He no longer needed me to sign documents. He only needed me to stop questioning them. Monday morning I dressed carefully. Dark trousers. A cream blouse. A charcoal blazer my father bought me before my first investor meeting. I did not dress to prove I was competent. I dressed because the jacket reminded me who I had been before Daniel began describing me. Rachel and I arrived at Bennett Restoration at 8:35. The receptionist stared as though she had seen a ghost. Perhaps according to company records she had. "Mara. Good morning, Elise." She stood slowly. "We were told." "I know." Daniel appeared near the elevators. He wore a navy suit and the expression he used when speaking to nervous clients. Calm. Sympathetic. Dangerous. "Mara, you shouldn't be here." I looked around the lobby. My father's photograph hung behind him. "This is my company." He lowered his voice. "You're making this harder than it needs to be." "For whom?" He glanced at Rachel. "You brought a lawyer. You brought a death certificate." His face tightened. "It was not a death certificate." "That is your defense?" Several employees had begun watching. Daniel moved closer. "Come into my office." "No. We need to discuss your health privately." "My health is not on the agenda." "It is the entire agenda." He looked almost sad. "That performance would have convinced me once. Your mother's illness affected you more than you realized." "My mother recovered enough to know I'm alive." Daniel's eyes changed. "Only slightly." "Did you speak to her?" "Yes." The answer unsettled him. My mother had saved years of messages from me during the period Daniel claimed I was missing. Photographs. Video calls. Hospital visitor records. He could not erase 10 months of my life simply because the board had not seen it. The meeting began at 9. 8 directors sat around the table. Daniel occupied the chair at the head. My father's chair. I sat opposite him with Rachel beside me. Adrian joined by secure video. His presence surprised Daniel. "This is an internal meeting," he said. Adrian replied calmly. "My company advanced $6 million based on representations now believed to be false." Daniel looked toward the board. "Mr. Cole's acquisition firm is attempting to exploit a private marital dispute." One director, Helen Grant, frowned. "Daniel, is Mara dead?" No one moved. Daniel exhaled patiently. "Obviously she is not physically deceased." I almost admired the phrase. Physically deceased. As though there were another acceptable form. Helen continued. Did you tell Mr. Cole she was? I explained that Mara had permanently withdrawn and that her interests had transferred. Using an affidavit listing a date of death? It was an internal legal mechanism. Rachel placed the document on the screen. The board members began reading. Daniel looked at me. You don't understand the consequences of exposing confidential records. I understand the consequence of remaining silent. He turned toward the directors. Mara has been experiencing paranoia for some time. Rachel placed a second document on the screen. Daniel's email to Holt Corporate Services. My wife is effectively gone. Then a third. The scan signature folder. Daniel's face lost color. That material was obtained illegally. Melissa provided it through counsel, Rachel said. Silence settled across the room. Daniel's hand moved toward his phone. Rachel continued. Ms. Crane has also confirmed that she notarized documents without witnessing Mara's signature at Daniel's instruction. Daniel stood. This meeting should be adjourned. Helen did not move. Sit down. He stared at her. Helen had worked with my father for 20 years. Daniel often dismissed her as old-fashioned. That morning her voice carried more authority than his. He sat. Adrian presented the acquisition records. Daniel had claimed sole ownership. He had accepted $6 million. He had promised clear title to the company and my father's workshop. Then Adrian displayed photographs of the Charleston house purchased through Melissa's company. One director removed his glasses. Company acquisition funds paid for this? $2 million, Adrian said. Daniel leaned forward. It was temporary housing connected to the expansion. With 2 children's bedrooms? I asked. He looked at me. Melissa's children were going to stay during project work. Melissa appeared on the video screen. Her face was pale. No, she said. Daniel froze. Melissa continued. You told me it would be our home. No one spoke. You said the sale would give us enough money to leave before Mara understood what happened. Daniel looked toward the controls. Turn that off. Helen folded her hands. No. Melissa described the forged documents. The plan move. The false incapacity statement. She admitted her own involvement. She did not make herself innocent. That made her testimony stronger. Then Rachel placed the final draft on the screen. Statement of mental incapacity. Mara Bennett. It described me as delusional, unstable, and unable to distinguish personal memories from business reality. Daniel had planned to ask the board to accept it that morning. The document was unsigned. The physician's section was blank. But my husband's signature already appeared beneath the sentence. I certify that the above statements are accurate to the best of my knowledge. Helen looked at Daniel. You intended to declare your wife incompetent without a medical evaluation? I intended to request one. After representing her as dead? Daniel's control finally cracked. She abandoned the company. His voice filled the room. She left me to handle everything while she played nurse for her mother. I felt the old guilt rise instinctively, then disappear. I had not abandoned him. I had trusted him. He continued. I saved this business. I expanded it. I negotiated the acquisition. Mara returned when there was finally money to claim. I looked around the table. Several directors had known me since my 20s. You all know when this company began, I said. No one interrupted. My father and I worked from one rented room. Daniel joined 7 years later. I looked at him. You did help grow it. His expression shifted, surprised by the acknowledgement. But helping build something did not give you permission to erase every person who came before you. I turned toward the board. I am not asking you to believe my marriage was happy. It wasn't. I am asking you to look at documents, dates, and bank records. Rachel distributed a timeline. On the left were Daniel's claims. On the right was the evidence. Claim, Mara disappeared. Evidence. Hospital visitor records, company emails, and home security footage showing me living with Daniel. Claim, Mara voluntarily surrendered control. Evidence. Copied signatures and false notarizations. Claim, company funds supported expansion. Evidence. Waterfront residence purchased for Daniel and Melissa. Claim, Mara was mentally incapable. Evidence. No medical evaluation, only a draft prepared after Adrian saw me alive. Daniel had survived through separate explanations. Once they appeared on one page, each lie destroyed another. Helen requested 2 votes. The first suspended Daniel as chief executive and removed his access to company funds. Unanimous. The second restored my voting authority pending independent review of the ownership records. 7 votes in favor. Daniel voted against. The acquisition was formally suspended. Adrian's company demanded the return of its $6 million. Daniel looked around the table. You are destroying Bennett Restoration. Helen replied. No. We are removing the man who treated it like stolen property. Security entered quietly. Daniel stood before they reached him. He gathered his papers and looked at me. This isn't over. I know. He expected fear. Instead, I looked toward my father's photograph. For the first time, it has actually started. Daniel was escorted from the building. I thought that would be the day's final revelation. Then the company's financial controller entered the room carrying a red folder. We found another account, she said. My stomach tightened. How much? $3.4 million. Under Daniel's name? She shook her head. Under yours. I stared at her. I didn't open it. I know. She placed a transaction report on the table. The account had received company funds for almost 4 years. Payments described as founder distributions, consulting income, property reimbursements. All under my identity. Rachel looked at the final column. Where did the money go? The controller's face tightened. Most of it remains there. Most. A transfer was scheduled for this afternoon. To where? She turned the page. The destination was a private trust in the Cayman Islands. The beneficiary field contained 2 names. Daniel Bennett. And a second person I did not recognize. Elliot Bennett. I looked at Rachel. Who is Elliot? No one answered. Then Helen whispered. Daniel's son. My heart stopped again. Daniel had no son. At least not one he had ever told me about. Elliot Bennett was 17 years old. His mother, Rebecca Hale, had worked with Daniel before he joined my father's company. According to the records Rachel found, Daniel had been supporting them for years. School tuition, rent, medical insurance, vacations. Every payment passed through the account opened under my name. Daniel did not only use my identity to hide money. He used it to finance a son he had never acknowledged to me. Rebecca's name appeared on no company records. Elliot's appeared only in the Cayman Trust. If the sale had closed, Daniel planned to transfer millions into that trust before leaving the country. Melissa and her children were supposed to move into the Charleston house. Rebecca and Elliot were supposed to receive the offshore money. And I was supposed to be blamed for the missing funds. He had not built one secret life. He had built several, each separated carefully enough that no one woman could see the whole picture. Rachel looked at me across her desk. Do you want to contact Rebecca? Yes. Why? Because I want to know which version of Daniel she was given. Rebecca agreed to meet after speaking to her attorney. She arrived at Rachel's office the following afternoon. She was 44 with tired blue eyes and a guarded expression. Elliot did not come. I'm not interested in defending Daniel, she said immediately. I'm not asking you to. She looked at me. He told me you died. The sentence no longer shocked me. When? 14 months ago. The same period he used for Adrian. Daniel had synchronized the lies. He said the company's sale would finally allow him to publicly acknowledge Elliot. Did Elliot know Daniel was his father? Yes. Did he know Daniel was married? Rebecca hesitated. He knew Daniel had been married. Past tense. Dead wife. Dead marriage. Dead owner. Daniel removed obstacles by changing verbs. Rebecca continued. Daniel visited him several times a year. He promised he would move closer after the sale. Did he tell you about Melissa? No. I showed her a photograph of the Charleston house. Rebecca's face changed. He showed me this house. What did he say? That it would belong to Elliot. Of course. The same house. Different future. Melissa believed she would live there with her children. Rebecca believed it belonged to Daniel's son. Daniel had promised the same asset to 2 families, just as he promised the same company to himself using my death. Rebecca looked toward the transaction records. I didn't know the money came through your name. I believe you. He seemed surprised. Why? Because Daniel's system depended on everyone knowing only enough to remain useful. She lowered her eyes. I stayed quiet for Elliot. So did I for my marriage. Silence settled between us. Not forgiveness. Recognition. Rebecca provided years of messages. In one Daniel wrote, Mara's estate will fund the trust once the acquisition closes. My estate. A phrase used for property left by someone dead. I had been alive when he wrote it. Rebecca's attorney forwarded everything to investigators. The scheduled Cayman transfer was blocked. The account in my name was frozen and placed under court supervision. The Charleston property was seized as part of the financial dispute. The company recovered most of Adrian's $6 million advance. Not all. Some money had already been spent. But enough remained to prevent Bennett Restoration from collapsing. The investigation lasted 10 months. Reality did not move with the speed of a revenge story. There were interviews, forensic reports, motions, delays. Daniel denied everything until the evidence became too specific to explain. He blamed Melissa for the signatures. Melissa produced his written instructions. He blamed Rebecca for hiding Elliot. Rebecca produced 17 years of payments and messages. He blamed me for neglecting the company. The records showed that he began forging my authority before my mother became ill. Every excuse revealed an earlier lie. My divorce was finalized before the criminal case ended. The house remained mine. My family trust remained mine. Daniel surrendered his disputed company shares as part of the financial settlement. He was ordered to repay misused funds through assets, future income and the sale of properties connected to his schemes. I did not take the Charleston house. I wanted no room inside a future built from my disappearance. Daniel eventually entered guilty pleas connected to forged records, financial deception and unauthorized transfers. I attended the hearing where he admitted creating documents that falsely represented me as deceased and incapable. The judge asked, "Was your wife aware that you had declared her dead for business purposes?" Daniel stood beside his attorney. "No. One word. Return my life to the official record." After the hearing he asked to speak with me. Rachel remained nearby. Daniel looked smaller without his office, title and expensive suit. "I never wanted to hurt you," he said. I stared at him. "You declared me dead. I was trying to save the company. You took money out of it. I was under pressure. You built a house for another woman. That situation was complicated. You created a trust for a son you never told me existed." His eyes lowered. "I was afraid you would leave." The answer was so dishonest that I almost laughed. "You erased me because you were afraid I would leave? I knew you would never understand Elliot. You never gave me the chance. He was born before we married. That makes the lie worse, not better." Daniel looked toward the courthouse windows. "I kept telling myself I would fix everything after the acquisition. That is how you lived." He looked at me. "What does that mean?" "You treated truth like a debt that could always be paid later." His expression broke slightly. "I did love you. I believed that he believed it. But love inside Daniel had always existed beneath ownership. He loved people when they supported the structure he wanted. When they asked questions he replaced them. With paperwork. With lies. With new promises. You loved the version of me that trusted you without checking," I said. He swallowed. "Do you hate me?" "No." That surprised him. "I spent months proving I was alive." I stepped closer. "I'm not giving you more of my life by carrying hate too." I walked away. Bennett Restoration did not keep Daniel's name on the executive floor. It had never been his company to rename, but over time, people had begun calling it Halston Bennett Group after his marketing campaign. At the first shareholder meeting after the investigation, we restored the original name. Bennett Restoration Group. My father's surname. My surname. The name that existed before Daniel entered the building. I did not become chief executive. People expected me to. Instead, I became chair of the board and hired an experienced operations leader. For years, Daniel convinced me that stepping away meant weakness. I learned that leadership was not controlling every room. It was knowing which responsibilities belonged to you, and which should never belong to one person alone. We created stronger financial safeguards. No executive could approve major transfers independently. Ownership changes required outside verification. Employees could report concerns directly to the board. And every founder's photograph returned to the main lobby, including mine. 1 year after the dinner with Adrian, I invited him back to the same restaurant. Rachel joined us. This time, no leather folder waited beside his chair. No false death document rested between the wine glasses. Adrian raised his glass. To the woman who returned from the dead. I smiled. I was never gone. He nodded. That's true. After dinner, I walked outside alone. The city was cold and bright. Cars moved through the streets. People entered restaurants. Phones rang. Life continued in ordinary ways. For months, I had expected freedom to feel dramatic. It did not. It felt like walking to my own car without wondering which version of my life my husband had told someone else. It felt like opening a bank statement and recognizing every account. It felt like hearing my name without checking whether it had been placed beneath a lie. Daniel took me to meet his business partner because he believed he had separated his worlds perfectly. The dead wife in the acquisition documents. The harmless consultant beside him at dinner. The unstable woman he planned to present to the board. The secret source of funds supporting the people he kept hidden. All of those women carried my face. But none of them were me. The real woman was sitting across the table when Adrian said, "You're supposed to be dead." That sentence did not end my life. It returned it to me. Sometimes the most dangerous lie is not the one told about what you did. It is the lie that says you no longer exist strongly enough to challenge what was done in your name. And sometimes your final move is not revenge. It is appearing in the room where your absence has become profitable, and refusing to disappear again. Tell me in the comments where you're watching from. What would you have done after hearing, "You're supposed to be dead"? Would you have confronted your husband immediately, or stayed calm long enough to uncover everything? For more stories about betrayal, intelligent revenge, and women who reclaim their names, subscribe to Her Final Move and stay with us.